Hi folks, welcome to Wednesday's I Write Radio podcast, videocast. We're going to have a chat about the Nicola Sturgeon presser, PMQs with the bold Boris. I think we may mention Murdo Fraser at some point, and anything else that comes to mind. Today I've got Stuart Lockhead with me.
Hi there, Norrie. How are you doing?
Not bad. And Jimmy Hutton.
Afternoon, you pair of reprobates.
And myself, Norrie Stewart. The presser was not exactly inspiring. Jimmy, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was all a bit dull today, mate. Obviously, I think half of the questions and half of the presser was basically around the Cytel outbreak in Europark, which is
North Lanarkshire.
It's interesting. Yeah. Aye, but other than Tom Martin's idiocy, I didn't think a great deal came out of it. So,
what did Tom Martin say then?
Well, he actually asked the deputy CMO or whoever it was that was standing with Nicola today if there was any sign of a shutdown of the outbreak, which is a bit odd given that it's 4 days old and we know that there's an incubation period of 5 to 14 days. But I suppose that's kind of standard for somebody that has reached the giddy heights of working for the Express.
I did notice, talking about that outbreak, that every single report in the Scottish press, on the telly anyway, mentioned that they were working for the English NHS. I think
the people in the call centre.
Yeah, I think
not the prevention, the health prevention people.
No, but I think they got the message from Twitter that they better mention it or there would be hell to pay. But it was certainly made plain that their employers were the English NHS.
Monica Lennon not being able to bring herself to say the word England in the title Public Health England the other day drew some ire on Twitter, didn't it?
Yes, she was not well received.
I think it's worth pointing out that people who don't know their geography, Eurocentral is named. It's very cleverly named. It is right smack bang in the middle of Scotland. And when it comes to tracing people who go to work there, bearing in mind that my son used to drive from Leith to work there every day, there'll be people from all over Scotland possibly working there. So as far as tracing an outbreak, all of us, a long way out, you know. So they must have considered that. So fingers crossed for them.
It was interesting that she named the boozers and coffee shops
and got one wrong.
That people had used.
I bet they're well pissed off in Clark's Bar in Wishaw.
Well, are they? At least they got a mention.
Well, it's probably the best bit of advertising anything in Wishy's ever had, mate. Let's be honest.
And she thanked them for their cooperation, which I thought was a nice touch.
Well, I was impressed with the numbers, mate. I was impressed with the fact that she came back to us and told us that there had been 20 positive cases out of 390 test results that they've got back, 15 in the actual Cytel building, 5 out with it. And they'd done the 400 tests, so there's still 10 tests to come back. But the number there is absolutely bang on the 5%. You know what I mean?
Aye. Anything else out of the presser, Stuart, that caught you?
Yes, there was something. Well, here we go. Yes, we discovered today that Ireland has now stuck the island of Great Britain. Didn't you get upset, guys? That's simply England, Scotland, and Wales is not on the green list. So you can, if you go to Ireland on your holidays and come back to Scotland, you will go into quarantine. You're wondering why?
Sorry, Ireland is no longer on our green list.
No, it's the other way. It's Ireland.
No, it's the other way around. If you go to Ireland, you will have to quarantine. You don't have to quarantine when you come back.
Oh, yeah, that's true. You're right. Sorry, I got that wrong. Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for correcting us. Yeah, so you don't really want to be going there. Obviously, there's a difference if you live in Northern Ireland. Did you show there's a time and a place for geography matters and not politics?
Mm-hmm. There'll be some Tory MP sitting at Westminster totally dumbfounded by this, because he doesn't understand that Ireland controls its own borders.
there'll be some that didn't understand what borders are, mate. So I think
Well,
it's a bookshop somewhere.
Ireland's doing very well these days. It's on the Security Council, where the UK might not be there for very much longer, depending if Scotland stays part of it.
It'll no doubt be the same MP that thought he was entitled to an Irish passport.
And right, I think, yeah, well, no, I wish I could get one. I've only got one other topic that struck me, and was the First Minister was very clear about, here we go, I'm starting to sound like a politician. She was very clear about, she said, look, if you go abroad, if you book a foreign holiday, I cannot promise that things could change while you're abroad, so that you might, by the time you come back, you might have to go into quarantine. In fact, if you go on a foreign holiday, things may change over there, and you no idea what might happen. So her advice was absolutely black and white: stay in Scotland and have a staycation and support Scottish tourism.
I think the thing that I noticed was that the desperation to get more headlines out of the schools opening on the 11th of August.
Yeah.
Because she had to say again today, as she did yesterday and the day and Thursday, that, you know, if things go badly, the schools will possibly not be open. So I'm looking at yo-yo headlines in the Express. You know, one day it'll be schools will definitely open. Why don't we have enough childcare in place to cover for teachers or whatever? And then the next day it'll be Sturgeon threatens to close schools due to incompetent pandemic management or whatever.
That's possible, but we're also going to see a list tomorrow, which I don't have in front of me, but neither, I don't suppose either you do either, a list of the businesses that will no longer be expecting to open at the end of this month. Beauty parlours.
Well, there's a few. She mentioned them last week. These people were, a couple of weeks ago. It was clearly stated when we went into phase 3, not to expect phase 3 to last 3 weeks as phase 2 did. So I'm pretty sure all the old wifeys that are hanging out for a game of bingo are gagging to get back to Manderson Street or whatever. You're just going to have to wait, you know. It's the priority, as she's clearly stated, there's a two-pronged priority: to get the schools back and to try and relax shielding so that people that have been sat in their house since 23rd of March, since maybe before that, I know they've been released somewhat, but if we can find a way to let these people have a better quality of life, I don't care if the bingo halls or swimming pools didn't open for another few weeks yet.
I mean, it's fairly obvious that there's scientific reasons. Gyms, swimming pools, etc. I thought beauty parlours were open. I thought beauty parlours, nail bars, things like that were allowed to open as of today.
The kind of army, there's certain therapies that can't be partaken of. Massage therapy, for example, some spa treatments and stuff like that. But
I think it's outrageous that massage parlours aren't open
for many people.
I think it's outrageous. There's a lot of.
I'm sorry, you're missing out, Norrie.
Very ugly single men who must be
sure they'll do
tearing their hair
if you
out.
phone up, mate.
All right, okay.
Most of them haven't got much hair, mate.
There was other thing. Sorry, the Sun fellow, Chris Musson, he was guaranteed to make a fool of himself. So he tried to connect. What did he try to connect? Decisions about what was happening out at North Lanarkshire at the Sitel call centre with the secrecy, apparently, about the Nike incident back in, when was that? March or February? And the First Minister was having none of that. She said, we conducted a genomic study to see what happened and where it had come from, and there was no wider outbreak from that event. Yeah,
I don't care how many times they need Nike ran back down their throat before they stop trying to spit it out as a story. Even the goons like Jackson Carlaw and Ian Murray have never mentioned Nike for weeks, because they know if they do, they get rammed swiftly between the cheeks of their posterior.
But Chris Musson will have gone back in the Sun archives and seen no mention of the fact that it was contained and properly dealt with. because
Aye,
the
true.
Sun won't have published that. So it's very difficult for poor Chris.
Do you think somebody like Chris Musson occasionally has a look at like a Scotsman or possibly even a Byline Times or that, just to kind of balance what he's having to wade through every day by working for Rupert?
No, I don't.
He just sees the money.
I really don't believe that these guys spread their net any wider than their own paper, because if they do, they must have doubts. You know, I mean, they can read and write. Well, you presume they can read and write. They're journalists. And if they read too widely, the New York Times, for instance, would blow their minds.
Possibly, mate. I sat and watched the second episode of that Rise of the Murdoch Empire on BBC Two last night, and I forgot just how bad an actor was Rupert was until they re-showed him appearing in front of the Parliamentary Select Committee on phone tapping. It was quite a good giggle to watch that again.
I'm sure they you know the guy that tried to attack him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they paid him to do that.
Who his ex-wife beat up, that one.
No, it's all right.
Well, she jumped in.
Oh yeah, I mean she jumped in, but I mean I'm sure that was prepared. That was all planned.
Oh, I was quite impressed with her. She looked like she really meant it. Okay, let's move on to the highlight of every week, PMQs, and Boris's incredible ability not to answer a single question.
He gets away with murder, mate. I know that Lindsay Hoyle gave him a warning again to speak to the chair or speak through the speaker rather than play to the masses, but he really gets away with murder in terms of not answering questions, in terms of he's got the cheek to accuse Keir Starmer going to his pre-prepared lines when his whole strategy today was thrown when Lindsay Hoyle forgot how to count to 6.
That's right. He only got 5 questions.
Aye, but Boris thought it was the last question and hits in with a big line that's been set up about mere flip-flops in Bournemouth Beach, which he was really upset when Keir Starmer got another question because Starmer absolutely destroyed the nonsense about flip-flop, and I'll let somebody else deliver Starmer's line, but it was a beauty.
It was every week now. It's becoming more and more obvious that Boris Johnson cannot stand up there at the dispatch box and think on his own 2 feet. He obviously has to have a script in front of him, which belies the tales of him turning up to make after dinner speeches and scribbling something on the back of a menu.
Aye, the great communicator, and the head of the Oxford Debating Society. Is abject paucity of talent for thinking on his feet or coming up with anything that hasn't. I mean, he's worse than Donald, and that's saying something.
His delivery's good, but
his delivery is good. I don't know if you're an idiot.
Oh no, he always gets a laugh where he's meant to. I'll say that for him. He should have been a comedian. Well, he should have officially been a comedian instead of an amateur comedian.
In some sort of Lithuanian comedy club, maybe. Keir Starmer's answer to his the flip-flop thing was simply that, and that's from a columnist who always writes 2 versions of everything he writes.
Yeah, that was 2 opposing versions. I think the actual was very good.
And unfortunately for Boris, that showed that Keir Starmer can actually think on his feet, something that Boris will never be able to do. So maybe that's why they put him in a fridge, though. Maybe that's it, because Pratchett once created characters, golems, which they thought miles better when they were in a cold store. In fact, one of them in particular became a bloody genius when he was in a cold store. Maybe that's why Boris goes into the fridge, so his brain doesn't overheat.
Do you think Boris has ever read Terry Pratchett?
I think he probably looked at the picture on the front of the covers and thought, "Oh, this looks a bit complicated for me." Likes.
Well, he said it's look, the world's flat. That suits me.
Aye, that's about the only thing that he would get, mate. The flat world and the elephants.
I do have an observation about Keir Starmer, and it's become fairly clear that he's no longer expecting an answer from Boris. So all he's doing is preparing his speech in bits, essentially. And this week, which to some extent we discovered last week that he didn't, well, twice in fact, and the week before, when Boris actually lied to a question, Keir Starmer didn't come back and say, you lied. However, this week, as we discovered, when Corbyn muttered his final line about flip-flopping in Bournemouth Beach, he did have an answer. But yes, no, he seems to have given up on expecting an answer from Boris.
I thought the whole thing was kind of poor today. I mean, I thought Ian Blackford again was poor.
He was back in the Heelans.
Aye, but there was an interesting question for Kirsten Oswald calling. I mean, it was basically batted away and ignored by Boris. But again, she was calling for something that we've spoke about quite a few times on this, about sectoral specific support. Because at the end of furlough, there's going to be a mass influx of unemployment and people laid off and what have you. And certain sectors in particular are going to need longer term support. And the Tories just will not even talk about this. I'm beginning to wonder if it's time that we, i.e. activists in Scotland, start pressuring the SNP to come up with some sectoral specific support themselves, because it looks like London are just going to let people burn. They're just going to let businesses go under. And if that's the case, we've got to try and find some money for somewhere to help out for, particularly in the rural communities, because I've said before, I don't care if some of the hotel groups in Edinburgh go bust. These big hotels, someday will buy them, but the places in the Highlands and that, they could go under and never come back.
I don't think there's any money left. I think because of the extra money that they've already put in for the small business sector, I think they're going to struggle to find anything in the Scottish coffers.
You could be right, mate, but we always seem to come up with 300 or 400 million underspend at the end of the day, and I know that we have to keep a very tight eye on it, but I think we might be able to wring out even 50, 60 mil, mate, could make a massive difference to some of these businesses.
Well, they're not going to get to borrow. I think it's pretty obvious now that Westminster's policy is to pauperise us. Mm-hmm. They want to control all the purse strings now.
Well, as I say, that's what happened under Thatcher. As I said yesterday, she shut down the Greater London, whatever it was, London Authority. She shut
Greater
down
London Council, GLC.
Shut down Strathclyde. She shut down Lothian. She shut down all the bigger authorities. She removed devolution in one sweep.
It'd be interesting to know if you know how they've. I mean, I'm assuming that the UK government in Scotland office is now fully staffed with its 3,000 members. So it'd be interesting to know if the Scottish government owned any of the buildings that these people were previously in. Why not sell off the buildings that these folk were in?
Well, we're up at
a lot of stuff was
Street, weren't they?
Melville Street, Melville Crescent, mate. Those are worth a fortune.
Yeah.
And Centre 1, the tax office out at East Kilbride, did the Scottish government own any of that site?
Melville Crescent Place is the party HQ, Tory HQ.
No, it's not. It was the Scottish office.
Oh,
On the corner, it was the Scottish office. I don't know where the Tory HQ is in Scotland.
Oh, sorry, no, you're right. That was Scottish. It's in Cumberland Street or Northumberland Street, one of the two. It's in the new town.
All right. Oh, at least they got a couple of good boozers near it.
Maybe there's a few buildings lying empty that the Scottish government could consider putting on the market and raising money, because frankly, I'd rather see them punt some assets and try and keep people in work. And if it comes down to a fire sale, the assets, fine, sell it.
I thought, rewinding a wee bit to Keir Starmer, I was impressed by he staked his reputation compared to the Prime Minister by saying that he actually, as a lawyer, worked for the Litvinenko family. He was the guy that got poisoned with polonium, supposedly by Putin.
Yeah. Well, nothing supposed.
And he also, what's this, Life of Operations. Anyway, he was intimately involved when he was he chief prosecutor?
I think
DPP.
If Boris had made the accusations at Holyrood that he made, in the Commons today, I'm pretty sure he'd have been coming back to apologise,
Yeah.
because he made half a dozen. It wasn't just one.
You're right. Oh, you're right there.
Half a dozen accusations hurled at Keir Starmer
Yeah.
that will be on record. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think
his
he was desperately trying to get some blood to
condemnation.
stick.
Well, I can remember his condemnation of the Schiphol thing, the poisoning in Leicester. I can remember him standing up because it was not the position that Corbyn was taking.
Aye, it was absolutely opposed to the directly opposite of what Corbyn was saying.
Yeah, so
I was delighted that Litvinenko got a mention just on the basis of Ian McWhirter finally recognised that boy's name, because he published a piece in the Herald this morning that called him Litvinov. And I thought, geez, how did that get past you and your editor that you can't remember Alexander Litvinenko's name when you're using it as a big stick to beat someone with? Just shows you how poor the Herald's got that got published.
Well, it's a sub-editors that have disappeared all across the printed press. I mean, you don't need to read all the newspapers are the same.
So a victory for Keir Starmer?
I would have said yes on points. I didn't think it's difficult, mate. Boris is one of these people that sometimes you couldn't mark him with a bag of spanners. He really doesn't care. He's just wanting to get in there. Clearly, he's been told to appear combative because he got his ass handed to him on a plate a couple of times when they finally got forced to actually do PMQs. But,
well, I don't think he's even in the same boxing ring, Jimmy.
No,
I think they've decided they are not going to play the game. They're just going to send him out there to make his points and answer no questions. And the speaker needs his ass kicked. The speaker has to pull him up and tell him he's there at PMQs to answer questions. He is not there to put the Tory line to the Commons.
Yeah, but that's not how he got elected. He obviously promised not to be too tough on the Prime Minister, otherwise he wouldn't have got the job.
Well, it's a complete farce now. I don't think Boris Johnson has even attempted to answer a question in the last 6 weeks. And it becomes even more apparent when Sturgeon stands up 3 days a week now at our press conference and answers all the questions, or says she can't because she doesn't have the information.
Yeah,
she continues to be very, very impressive.
As you may have noticed, guys, I have a cartoon of a dead cat in the background.
Oh, which one is it?
Which brings me neatly, I hope, to Murdo, why doesn't anybody vote for me, Fraser, who is, well, spinning a dead cat round his head in the smallest room in the world, insisting that the SNP open up an inquiry into Russian interference into the Scottish referendum in 2014.
Now look, come on. I'm going to say this right at the top, because there is no evidence other than RT and Spiked, which are two public broadcasters in the UK, that the Russians had any interference at all in the Scottish independence referendum.
Yeah,
that's why the dead cat's there, Stuart, because Murdo Fraser wants an inquiry. What was actually said in the report was there was statements made in public post independence, after the referendum, by Russia, saying that they had doubts about the veracity of the result.
Right. It's credible open source reporting was what they said in the intelligence report. That's what same as all it means is what you and I could have read on the...
Well, worryingly, Stuart, what we put out on a daily basis could actually be described as a credible open source, because it's anything that is published.
Yeah, exactly. Oh!
And the footnote with a nice wee asterisk behind it, when you went down and had a look at the footnote, it referred to some horse's butt that stays down in Haddington that gets paid to write stuff by the Integrity Initiative of all people.
Right, goodness me, yes.
By the way, Jimmy,
They are part of the British Army, aren't they? The Integrity Initiative.
No, that's 77 Brigade, mates. It's the Integrity Initiative were supposedly they were set up by the Secret Service.
anybody whose name is the Integrity, what were they? The Integrity Institution, was it?
Initiative.
The Institute for Statecraft.
Oh, that's another one. Okay.
Anyway, Jimmy, I'm going to tell my mum that you called me a credible source.
Oh dear.
She'd be rude to see you. Well, she would if she wasn't dead, right enough.
Should be rude to haunt me instead, mate.
So I'm interested who exactly this inquiry is going to question, because I can't see MI6, MI5 or GHQ being happy to come and sit in front of a Holyrood committee to answer questions on state secrets.
Well, they don't. They could just send a letter back and say, we saw it on RT, Russia Today. That's where we saw it. It's an end of story.
Well, didn't we have Murdo yesterday also? And Jenny Mara published on Twitter, but Murdo said on the radio that Alex Salmond is a paid employee of Russia Today, and he's not.
Which is a lie.
That's an abject lie. He provides programming to them. He's not an employee of them.
Well, his company receives payment for the show he does.
Mm-hmm.
That's beyond dispute, but they have no control over what he produces.
No. It's just, I mean, come on, mate. It was interesting that the whole thing with the Russia report, the more we look at it and the more we look at the way that the apparatchiks of Toryism were sent out to bat and sent out with a few lines to deliver, it's kind of there specifically for a reason. And I think that reason is to delegitimise the last referendum, give them an excuse to attempt to block the next one. And if we decide to do it ourselves, they'll use this. They'll say that it's on record that Russia interfered, so the result of any referendum would be illegitimate.
Well, you know that phrase, what is it? Credible. Let me look at again the phrase.
Credible open source
reporting. That was the intelligence level of the dirty dossier that sent us into the Iraq war. Did you know that?
Exactly, aye. And that dossier was basically a rip-off of some boy's doctoral thesis at an Iraqi university, a Saudi university.
At this point, I think we should give Craig Murray a wee thank you, because he has written a blog that points all this out. That explains exactly what the open source actually means in terms of intelligence reporting.
He is an expert in that field, having been an ambassador, a United Kingdom ambassador, and, as he said himself, the highest levels of security.
Which I wish that, well, I don't know. Has he ever let anything slip that he shouldn't have? I don't think he has.
No, mate. If he had, he'd be in jail by now under the Official Secrets Act. If there was one person going to get prosecuted under the Official Secrets Act, which, as we found out yesterday, is completely unfit for purpose, it would be Craig.
They're after Craig.
Do you know the most stunning thing about that? You can't be done under the Official Secrets Act unless whatever you've been involved in successfully undermines the British government.
It's not illegal to be a spy, but it is illegal to be successful at being a spy.
Incredible.
What an absolute crocking nonsense.
Incredible. Well, what it effectively means is you can try as many times as you want, but as long as you don't succeed, they can't charge you.
So I assume you must have signed it, Jimmy, if you were in the army. I signed it. Did you sign
it? A bit different for the old Len Dayton books, eh? Remember the old Len Dayton books when the British security services, certainly on paper, they were pretty good at the game.
I just, again, I have this picture in my head of, I watch Spooks quite a lot. And the idea that the Home Secretary or whoever dictates MI5's spying policy in the country, if that is true, why are they criticizing MI5? If they haven't been told to go and look at the electoral setup, are they expected to do it off their own bat? Because if they are, you better be worried.
Well, there was an argument that say MI5 are not going to go anywhere near something like the Brexit referendum, because whatever they came up with, it's a no-win situation for them, and they're going to get panned by one side or the other. But it's an interesting viewpoint that the Official Secrets Act you can drive a coach and horses through, and that our security services, these same security services, by the way, that everybody in Parliament stands up, thanks them every time they're mentioned, and tells us just how efficient they are and just how many jihadi attacks they've stopped since, say, 9/11 or since 7/7. They've stopped however many attacks. Actually, countless is the last number I heard. But they can't quite see the Russians coming. They never seen Russia as a threat. And when Putin said in 2007 that he was ramping up to a new Cold War, they just ignored it because they thought, nah, he's only kidding.
Well,
Very well put, Jimmy. Very well put.
As I say, the Russia report has and will continue to provide many dead cats, be it in Scotland or England. I fully expect the Labour Party to keep hammering away at this, because it's one of the pillars of the Tory party, isn't it? Your security is safe in our hands. Oh, there's somebody just giving me a few £100,000.
Really? I'll be round in 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, come on.
You'd be able to afford to have a game of tennis with Ruth Davidson if you had that kind of money.
Mrs. ex-Putin's foreign minister's wife. How much money is she? And Ruth Davidson still owes her lunch, and that was only 20 grand.
It runs into the millions.
Ruth Davidson's your lunch. Boris has played his game of tennis with her.
Just crazy.
I mean, somebody published a list today, and it's got her name, £200,000. And then again, another day, £200,000, and then £161,000. It goes, no. And there's about 10 or 15 donations, and they're all huge amounts of money.
And I noticed the Tories are trying to preempt the call for election funding to be provided from the taxpayer, because that's really unfair. I'm sorry. It's a far more sensible way to do it. Out of the taxes, you just tax the oligarchs more money and use that. But it doesn't come from their bank accounts, it comes from the Treasury.
Surely it'd be better for British political parties to be funded by British taxpayers rather than Russian taxpayers? Because that's where the oligarchs are getting their money. They're stealing it off the taxpayers of Russia.
Can you pay tax when you're running a protection racket?
Yes, well, what's the difference between a protection racket and tax?
One's called insurance.
I know, one's official and one's unofficial. It's the only difference.
I'm not sure, mate. You'd maybe have to ask Rupert and Murdoch and his sons if you can pay tax if you're running a mafia organisation.
Oh, allegedly.
No, you collect tax. Protection money is what you collect. Tax is what you collect.
Well, a protection racket is just unofficial insurance.
Call it tax. You pay money, you pay money not to get your business burnt, your pub burnt to the ground.
Go Standard Life and ask them.
It's just more proactive than normal insurance. Okay, I'm just kind of stunned about Murdo looking to give the Scottish Government more powers for this inquiry.
I know, it's quite entertaining that he wants a Parliament to have an inquiry into a reserved issue.
Yeah.
But usually he would be apoplectic if Nicola Sturgeon or anybody in the SNP comments upon reserved issues.
Unless, of course, it was to make them look bad. Anybody catch anything else today?
It's all faded away, Nori.
RBS, mate. RBS no longer exists. It is now NatWest PLC.
Did we vote yes in the referendum?
No, apparently we didn't, but they've decided that they're getting rid of the RBS name because it's toxic round the world, where it's Citizens Bank in America and Williams and Glyn down there.
Can I point out that that's very handy then? That means that when Scotland goes independent, we can use the title Reserve Bank of Scotland.
Aye, I quite like that title, mate.
I wouldn't think that they'll give up the title, mate.
No, I'm not talking
No.
about. I'm going to. It would be the Reserve Bank of Scotland, but you can guarantee journalists would cut it down to RBS anyway.
I'm thinking possibly that the branches in Scotland are going to still be called
Aye.
RBS.
They're still going to have that badge on them, mate, in Scotland,
Yeah.
aye.
Yeah.
Because
So-
let's be honest, if they took the RBS name down and put up NatWest, they would lose customers.
Yeah, they would. Yeah, they would. No doubt about it. I don't bank with RBS because
Go back a bit because I think they took over National Commercial Bank. Call it the National Commercial Bank.
you know, my first bank was the British Linen Bank.
Yeah, and they were taken over by the Bank of Scotland. Do you want an expert view on the history of banking? You don't.
No,
Not
because
really, mate, no.
it predates your time in Mao's army,
Oh, well.
Mhm.
and I don't trust anything you say as a capitalist. So nothing else caught anybody's eye?
Nah, mate.
Not today.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. No funnies to finish. What a pity.
Well, the funny to finish is to look forward to tomorrow's visit from our dear leader and imagine where he'll appear and who he'll appear in front of.
I think appears maybe the wrong thing to say here, Jimmy, because I don't think he'll be appearing to any of us plebs, that's for sure. Is he not having some sort of strategy meeting with the MPs and MSPs in the Conservative Party tomorrow? Are they not going to talk tactics?
That'd take all of 5 minutes, mate.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. There are now 3 new organisations set up. There's a committee that meets at number 10. There's a group of extreme unionist Tory MPs, and there's another group. One of you guys can remember what it is. Anyway, there are now 3 new pro-unionist organisations set up to protect the union. Do you think they're scared about something?
No, I think what they're actually doing is making sure that when they get up in front of the cameras and they're interviewed at the next Indie Ref, they have 7 or 8 voices for the union and 1 for nationalism.
I think you're both wrong. I think they're looking for a mass discount at the launderette for all their aprons and sashes. So if they all get together and send it in one big bag, they'll maybe be able to get a decent price.
Sticking their heads above the parapets, just in time to get chainsawed. Okay, guys. That was Wednesday's podcast. We'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, Jimmy Hutton, Stuart Lockhead. I'm Rory Stewart. And thanks for listening, folks. And those of you that have watched us, thanks for watching. Cheers for now, guys.